Good evening and welcome to Fridays Live with me, Raj Nayak. Today I have with me a very dear friend, all the way from London, Rahul Welde, Executive Vice President, Digital Transformation, the Unilever Group. Rahul, thank you for being on this show. You're the first friend I have from the industry who's here today. Can you see me?
Yes, I can see you, Raj, and it's a pleasure to join you today. So firstly, thanks a lot for inviting me. As you know, I've been watching a whole lot of your shows. In fact, just about everyone I've watched. And I was really surprised in many ways when you said, Rahul, how about joining the show? So I'm a big fan of what you're doing and it's very interesting. And I loved all the conversations you had so far on your show.
Yeah, no, I mean, I did it and I said, okay, let me go a little bit international, and then I thought of you and I've known you for many years and your journey has been quite inspiring. So I said, why not? Because everybody in the industry knows you. They know Rahul Welde. You've spoken in some of the biggest forums. You've been the chairman emeritus of the Mobile Association in Asia, and you've ticked all the boxes. And yet, a lot of people really don't know you. So I thought this is a great forum to bring you and chat with you, find out more about yourselves. So what's the time in London at the moment?
It's, I think, about close to 2 o'clock now. And just on that point of ticked all the boxes, I don't know about all the boxes because there are many more to tick yet. Huh?
No, you're still young. So, and your best is yet to come. I'm sure about that.
Yeah.
So tell me, before I find out more about you, so tell me what's the scenario right now in the UK? How are things there? Are you working from home? What's the scenario at the moment?
Yeah, very much working from home. Been working from home, I think, for the last 100 odd days, a little more perhaps. The city is slowly beginning to open up. And when I say slowly, meaning just last weekend, pubs, restaurants, and a few other things started opening up. Pubs are a big deal in the UK, as you know, and that was like the signal that things are coming back to normal because pubs opening is a big deal. And indeed, sporting action has started. There's a test match going on between England and West Indies. Premier League has started. Although all these are happening in camera without spectators, but my sense is that the cities things are starting to come back. Obviously, with a lot of caution, right? Because it's still there are fears of whether it's a second wave and how much social distancing is still required. But overall, I think things are looking up.
So globally, Unilever is shut, or it's working everywhere except for a few.
Most of our offices are still working from home. There are a few which have started going back to office. I think in China, for example, our office has started. So I think it varies by country and by city because the nature of what's happening is quite dynamic and diverse, right? In terms of the evolution and the spread of the pandemic, it's still quite varied.
You mentioned sports and you mentioned cricket is happening, football is happening, and I know you're a big sports fan. So as a sports enthusiast, how is it watching it without crowds?
I think, firstly, I was really missing it. I was missing all the action. And when Premier League, actually Bundesliga started before Premier League, but really happy. It's totally unreal because it's almost like you're watching players in practice. So the first few games were aired without any spectator sound. Then they superimposed the FIFA spectator sound onto what was going on. So I think it's interesting. Obviously not as much fun as watching it live, and definitely not as much fun as watching it with a big group of spectators or the crowd cheering. But I would take it anyways. In fact, last weekend, Formula One again started, right? In camera, no spectators, and cars just racing. So my reading would be as a viewer and as a sports fan, it's a very different experience. And I can only imagine for the players, it must be such a different experience because they perform, right? They're performers. They perform to the gallery and hundreds of thousands of people. And suddenly now they are in almost like the practice
speaking in an empty auditorium,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So very interesting. But Raj, lot of interesting things are happening, right? You might have seen Hamilton released on Disney Plus.
Yes.
And Hamilton is one of the most iconic live act performances. It's one of the best that we can ever see anywhere. In fact, to me, certainly the best I have seen. And then now it goes on to screen, and where effectively, again, they're performing in front of a camera, I suspect, and a handful of people. So this is a new dimension of entertainment, of media, of indeed sports as well.
Yeah, but their downloads went up by almost 70%. And
Yeah,
they,
because it's quite
also
expensive.
the acquisition cost was huge, huge.
Of course, but it's a very expensive show to watch it live.
Yeah.
And number two is that apart from being expensive, it's nearly impossible to get tickets. You have to book 6 months, 9 months in advance.
You know,
So then when it goes live on TV, it's amazing, right?
both my daughters are in the US, and I've been to New York City 4 times when Hamilton was playing, including one conference where I took my entire team to New York. And all the 4 times, we couldn't get tickets. And at one time, it was $1,200 and still it was not available. You said, okay, let us, pay that money. Let's watch it, because you heard so much about it, but you couldn't watch it. And now you can sit in your home and watch it. Even though I can visualize what the real experience would be if it was sitting in a theater in Broadway or something.
Yeah, but I highly recommend to anybody that this is an absolute must watch. If there's a show which is must watch, that is truly spectacular. And I was just sharing a couple of days back with a friend. I said, if you want to watch this show, make sure you don't watch it with your mobile or any of the distractions around, be present, get right in, because that's the other thing about shows. And when you're in an auditorium and you're watching things which are going live, you don't have. Whereas, when we watch on TV, inevitably you'll have an iPad open or your phone and somebody messages you, you reply. Those sort of distractions are best avoided when you watch something which is as exciting as good.
That is why I always say that cinema will always continue, because that experience is different, because you don't have to, otherwise somebody rings the front door, you pause, or somebody wants to go to the loo, you pause, but that doesn't happen in the cinema theater, and you're
popcorn
completely immersed. Yeah.
Popcorn is different.
Yeah. So coming back, so tell me, Rahul, I've known you for almost 2 decades now, probably more. And we've spent a lot of time in different parts of the world, okay? In London, in the US, in Taiwan, in different parts of the world. And yet, and this is what I keep telling people, we spend time, we meet people, we interact, we do business, we do everything, but we really don't get to know each other. We socialize, we have a drink, we do dinner with the family, and that's it. That's where it ends. So I want to go back to your beginning. Where did you start from? Where do you belong to?
Yeah, I grew up in Pune. Right, so all through my schooling and my college, right up to finishing my post-graduation, I was in Pune. So I'm very much a Pune person. And then when I started working, I moved to Bombay. And then from then I've joined Unilever from campus. So I spent my first 20 odd years in Pune. And then thereafter, I've been all over the place, but largely Bombay, Singapore, and now recently in London.
So
Pune.
A little bit about your family. How many brothers, sisters, your parents?
Yeah, I've got my dad passed away last November. My mom's still there. She's in Pune. My brother is a retired group captain. So he used to serve in the Indian Air Force, a very highly decorated officer, President's Award, couple of other things. Very, he was brave enough to fly the choppers under extreme conditions, which the government rightly recognized. He's now in Pune, retired. Early retirement, and then he's a group captain who's retired and settled in Pune, and they've got a family. My boys are, one of them is in the US, the other guy's here in the UK studying. They're both in university, and we have a daughter who's 13. So we are a small family in many ways, depends on whether we're small or big, but so my growing years were very much between my brother, my parents, and myself, But we have an extended family, in a manner of speaking, in a place called Vai, which is a small town, the foothills of Panchgani, So between Pune and Panchgani, there's a small town called Vai. And there we have an extended family. But all my growing years were very much in Pune. But all holidays, when I was growing up, used to be in Vai. Every holiday, we would just run away there. And then it was, the usual thing of, you could argue I'm a small town boy.
So you're in Vai, your grandparents lived there or something? Who lived in Vai? Or your...
Well, no, many of them are now still there. My grandfather and my grandmother on my mother's side are there. But many of them, as often is the case with old age, have now passed away. And then there are my uncles and a few other people who are still there, yes.
Any childhood memories, any anecdotes that you have?
Oh, plenty. Of
a small town boy,
Yeah, it's see. Firstly, like I said, every holiday we would escape to Y, right? And that was wonderful because you have the farms, you have the open area, you get pampered. If I was the oldest among all my cousins, I'm the oldest, and oldest by a far mile, right? So when you are the number one in the family, and then subsequently 4 years later, my brother, we were always pampered. So we enjoyed, and it was almost like to eat ice cream. We would go to Panchgani, right? So drive to Panchgani, have ice cream, come back, that sort of stuff. So great fun. We used to have naturally on the farms, there is a concept called Jatra in Maharashtra or in all the farmlands, which is really a celebration of the harvest. And that was one iconic time I distinctly remember, where you would have the best sort of meal, in a manner of speaking, a celebratory meal, right? And lots of small memories, but generally speaking, all around a whole lot of fun and being out there, usually outdoor.
What's your favorite Maharashtrian food?
I think I don't know about Maharashtrian, but my favorite for sure is a good mutton curry and mutton biryani. So if I either of the two, and I'm sorted.
Okay, now I know what to
Yeah.
offer you when you're in Mumbai next.
Despite Raj having traveled and eaten almost all cuisine that we can think of, for me, Indian food, and particularly some of the things that I mentioned, still a big fan. I still love it.
That's comfort food. So then from there, then you decided you pursued your education and then you joined Unilever, right? Am I correct? I mean,
Yeah, I joined. It's nearly 3 decades now. I joined the company many years back, but my journey to that actually. So when I grew up, I had no idea that I'm going to do this. Right? It's often the case with many people. Then you're just carefree. You're having a lot of fun in school, but in some ways, I nursed a very different ambition when I was growing up. Different to what, and perhaps I may have mentioned.
tell us about it. Tell us about it.
Yeah. So I actually grew up, Raj, with the ambition of being a fighter pilot in the Indian Air Force. So I was almost, I was totally invested in that idea, right from childhood. And I remember, I think it was my seventh standard. When I was in seventh grade, I'd written an essay, and typically people ask you to write an essay, what will you become or whatever. And my essay was all around, I'm going to be the Air Chief Marshal of the Indian Air Force, which a lot of people didn't even know what I was mentioning and how it was going. And I was, I remember, the teacher, then the principal saying that it's a very great ambition to have. But if you continue to perform and behave the way you are, then I think ambition is distant. I think I was very playful or naughty during school days, not necessarily the most academically proficient, but, enthusiastic, high energy, and that helped. But then when I tried later, that didn't work out. I gave the NDA twice, NDA entrance, when I was in 11th grade, right? Wrote it twice, didn't go through, but I still wanted to become. So then I joined the NCC and the Air Wing, and then studied through there, seeing like I'll have an alternate route to still go into the Air Force. That was after graduation, but that didn't work out. And then it was like, okay, so this is not happening. So dead end.
So what was your inspiration to become a pilot?
I think a love for planes for sure, but more than that, it was also service to the country. My father was a big influence in that line of thinking, because we just, not that we had people from the services in the family, but I was just enamored, if you want to call it that, as a child, of people in uniform and the whole sort of ethos of service to the country, really putting yourself in the line. And by the way, flying fighter planes, flying at supersonic speed, and it just, this unbelievable thrill, right? So yeah, it was more of, I can't pin it down to any one thing or two, but then you start looking at planes, it's much like planes, cars, these things have always been fascinating me.
And Khadakwasla being very close to Pune, I mean, when you were growing up, you would see people, people from the defense forces in and out of the campus and things like that.
That was much later though. That was more so when I was in college. They would always come down from Khadakwasla down to Pune for their Sunday, where they would get a Sunday off, I think every 2 weeks or something. But while as a kid, it was just, the whole sort of romanticism of the forces and serving for the country.
So tell me your journey. I mean, how did you join Unilever?
Then what happened?
It was called Hindustan Lever, right?
Yeah, that's right. It was called Hindustan Lever. So with this idea of joining the Air Force not worked out. So effectively sort of having failed to join the Indian Air Force. Then I had to completely recalibrate. And I was shattered at that point in time for a couple of days, but my dad managed to pull me out of that very swiftly. And then I thought of what should I be doing. And that's when then I decided to pursue the MBA and then subsequently joined Unilever, and which was and still is one of the number one, in fact, the number one employer in India by choice at Management Institute. Very much the case then also. So in several ways, very proud that for 30 years we managed to hold a number one employer rating. And then I was clear that if I didn't join a top company, of which of course Unilever was one, then I would write the civil services. Again, there was something at there's a bee in the bonnet, which is about service, right? And then I said, civil service is a great place, so not Air Force and not top company in the corporate world, then let's shoot for civil services. Thankfully enough, God's grace, Unilever selected me, or Hindustan Lever those days. And then I didn't think of civil services after that. So then I, put pause on that aspiration or ambition.
You said something very interesting. You said Unilever held the HUL or whatever at that time. Now it's all changed. Held a position for almost 25 years, 20 years, 25 years as the number one employer in the country. What would you attribute that to? Because you've been in that organization now for almost 24 years. You're going to complete Silver Jubilee very soon.
No,
so
30, nearly 30.
30 years?
Yeah, I finished 29.
Wow, 29, 30 years, wow. So almost 3 decades, right? So what would you attribute it to?
I think there are a lot of factors. So firstly, it's a great company. We all know that. Of course, a company of people and a company of brands. And for anyone who's interested in the brands and marketing in general, but more from a consumer perspective, then I think clearly, it's one of the best draws when it comes to India and even globally. And then secondly, it's about people, right? So when I say about people, one of the most fascinating aspects which helps people like me, helps many people in general, is about a meritocracy, where really what matters is what you are and what you bring to the table and how you contribute, rather than where you come from or what sort of education you've had and things like that. So meritocracy plays a very big role, and I think that's a great thing. Most people in large corporations are like us, and therefore you are really sort of growing along with people like you. A very strong ethos, Raj, of leadership and leadership development. So right from the time you join, there are influences on you which develop you as a leader, develop you as a person, whether it is mentoring, whether it is coaching, whether it's kicking ass hard. All of that sort of contributes towards your growth. And therefore, I think it's forget the fact that on the financial markets or on turnover, brands, it's high growth. It's a high people growth company. I don't think there's any company which grows people the way Unilever in India does, or for that matter, Unilever in generally, but more specifically because I joined Hindustan Lever 30 years ago, I can definitely say it's still the thing, where people growth is the sort of cornerstone. So if you're growing, 30 years just passes away in a breeze, right?
I can see all the MBA students or students who are listening to this episode today straight away saying, that's the company I want to join. You've done a great sales pitch for the company to recruit new people. But yeah, I've actually seen, and I know a lot of people who've been my friends who actually been with the company for more than 3 decades. Yeah, and it used to be there with companies earlier, but of late things are changing. It's like our parents also worked in companies for 3 decades, or first job and last job used to be the same. I don't know of many people of our age group that first job and last step. Probably you're the one whom I know now, okay, yeah. Who's first job and still you're there. So tell me, you joined them as a trainee, and what has your journey been since then?
But see, this is not as per, a lot of these things don't happen as per plan, from my perspective, like my individual perspective. So
I feel that.
And then, one thing leads to another. Like I said, if it's growth oriented from the perspective of learning and what you're able to do, then it works brilliantly. So for me, it's been fascinating and terrific. And I actually started in finance, Raj. So I had not a clue of media and marketing when I started my career, right? So I joined as a management trainee in finance. I did pretty much what used to be those days, a 18-month big, long training routine, which took us through the countries, through literally the hinterland of India, lived on extraordinarily thrifty sums of money to really see what it's on the ground, including staying in a village for a little over 8 weeks. And all of that builds, I mean, obviously all of us have character, even as we are building character as kids and then in college. But the rigor in the initial few years of working, I think is really important. And, doing the hard yards, and really, really sort of investing yourself into it. And the company, of course, supports that, encourages that, but then that enables you to build a different kind of character, which helps a lot later as you grow your career. And for me, I was, I always liked doing different things. And that helped because in starting in finance, then moving into sales, then going into business management, then a corporate role. So that sort of movement for me has been very, very rewarding because I like to do different things. So I didn't follow very traditional career paths in many ways, even within the company. And for that matter, if you look at it in general. So I always think of it like having done many roles, many companies, but 30 years with the same company. So it's an ideal blend, sweet spot for me. Perfect. Yeah. I never miss the variety. And then I got to meet great people like you, very, make a lot of friends along the way.
Yeah. No, but that's interesting, because my journey has been something similar, probably not one company, different companies. And you stay with that company as long as you feel there's growth and you feel that you're valued and things like that. And, recently I've set up something to do with happiness in the corporate workspace and something completely different. And so what is your view? I just want your view on how important is happiness in a corporate workspace, or how important is happiness in the first place?
I think overall, definitely extremely important, right? Because it's the best sense of well-being, especially in times which are stressful from a macro perspective. To be genuinely happy or genuinely content inside is an important aspect. And when you think of it, if individuals are happy, then a good chance that, business units, departments and companies produce better results. Like what do they say? Happy cows give more milk, right? So the equivalent of that when it comes
nice
to...
phrase. I'm going to use it.
Yeah, but it's true, it is absolutely true. And I'm sure you experience that with your teammates. I certainly do that. When you're in a zone which is about positivity, about happiness, whatever name we use, you find that the levels of engagement are higher, the commitment that people bring are higher, the creativity is higher. So on almost every index, you would say that it actually outperforms. And more important than outperforms, the level of satisfaction, what you contribute is significantly higher. Now, it could be business contribution, it could be social contribution, all of that comes from within, so
you become more magnanimous. When you're happy, you're magnanimous. And somebody comes and asks you, boss, can I do this?
Yeah. And you smile, right? So, I mean, any conversation, just like there are lots of memes and videos, right? Where people randomly smile, and we could do that now. And the moment we start smiling, laughing, we move from, whatever is pulling us back into a good, positive, happy zone. So I think a lot of it is internal and almost training yourself, to feel in a place where you can do it. I have one philosophy and, maybe I've shared this with you and that relates to how we are in the present or how we think and approach life, right? And my philosophy is quite simple, that the past is the past, the future is the future, but the now is wow. So if I'm speaking with you right now, it's wow. Right? What will happen an hour later when we finish the call and what happened an hour before? No, it doesn't matter, right? Right now we're having a good time. That's what's material.
Having a bloody good time. No, you said something about, smile and things like that. I remember when I moved to Mumbai, after I got married, I was in Mumbai. Then I went outside of Mumbai. I got married in Bangalore, Delhi. But back in Mumbai, 1999. And because my house is close to the beach, I used to go for my morning walks on the beach. And I used to find this bunch of people standing. And I didn't know then, it was called the Laughter Club. So they used to do something like, ha, ha, ho, ho, ha, 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 ha. And after 2 minutes, I was standing there laughing with them. And it's so true. I firmly believe that happiness creates a kind of energy and it radiates positivity to people around you.
Yeah.
And I just wanted your view because, I'm set on this journey. So it gives me a good perspective from a person from the corporate world.
And it's infectious, it's infectious. So I spoke earlier about thinking about training ourselves to be happy as individuals, as teams, as companies. And a part of that relates to shutting out without, not sort of dismissive, but in a way actually reducing the noise and the negative influences and enhancing the positive influences. And that can be done, so organizationally it can be done. And if you do that, then it's infectious. So it rubs off on each other, and then we are a happy bunch of people, but not foolishly happy, by the way. I mean, so not naive, right?
No, I think there's a difference between happiness and pleasure. I mean, you need to know that fine difference. What is happiness? Okay, coming back, let me go back. This is more about you. It's not about what I'm doing. So from finance, how did you move? I mean, what was your journey like?
See, what happened was I was in finance for a long time, and at a point in time, one of our senior VPs at that suggested to me that I should transition into sales, actually in ice cream sales in Mumbai. And it seemed I was already the commercial manager in the Western region for ice creams. So it was actually almost lateral, and some may even argue a step behind. So I actually said, okay, but it's exciting. Am I going to learn new stuff? And I had a very innocent question at that time, because I'm moving behind, will my salary change? No, don't worry. You're still. So then I said, okay, let's go for it. And then I loved it. I didn't then want to go back to finance. I said, okay, this is very exciting. The world of sales, marketing, not marketing as much that time, but really sales, so actual sort of, then since then, one role after another, but more often than not, based on what I call is, circumstances and my enthusiasm and passion for trying something new. So they just seem to collide very often, not always, by the way. So I did have some moments where, things were not as rosy, but that's okay, because once you sign up for a variable journey, then you have to be willing to take a few pit stops, willing to have a couple of places where you get the knocks. It's worked well, yeah.
In fact, when I used to actually groom people at my workplace, and sometimes I would tell them, you take this role, and they would look at it as a demotion. Boss, aap mere ko piche bhej rahe ho, And I tell them no. And the analogy I used to give them is, I say, if you want to do long jump, and in school we've all done it, right? You actually have to walk 4 or 5 steps back for you to go and do that leap. And that's the analogy I used to give them. And then they would get convinced. And I don't know whether they would get convinced or they would accept it, but sometime later they would say, that's the best decision I've done. And I think one of the things for youngsters, especially who are listening, I think it's very important not to be too bothered about designations and titles and things like that. As long as you're happy, and if you feel that this is what you want to pursue, I think you should just go for it. And I'm sure that was would you say that was a turning point in your career?
I think many turning points, but Raj, this is what my experience is, that this is more easy for us to say now than it is in the moment when you're making those choices, right? And sure. I still remember a lot of people, influencers around, typically constituting peer groups and some others. Actually, you feel like you are getting, you want to, because there's ambition, you want to race and you want to stay in the race. And so while everybody logically gets it, it's a very difficult one to take a side step or take a step behind. And it takes a lot of courage. Of course, luck plays an important role. I always say that, in all of us, certainly for myself, I can speak, luck has played an important role. Right things happening at the right time, great mentors. These cannot be, you cannot make it up. So it just happens, but you have to be there when it happens. So I feel, we often talk about, and this is something that I genuinely believe for a very long time. We talk of, okay, so, opening doors and things like that, right? And very often you have to create the door. Start with that. Like there's no door, but you may imagination, you create something and you make up a story in your head and then you go through the door. So the opening, seizing opportunities is obvious. Creating one is, I think, the next level of enterprise behavior or trying to do things which are exciting.
So then from sales, what did you do?
I then moved as a business manager for our popular foods business. Which was, it still is Annapurna brand. And then, we were pretty much building from scratch, a totally new business for the company those days. And that was a very exciting journey, learning new things, completely new, actually, certainly to me, including the art of making chapatis. I still can't make one very nicely, but I learned a lot about atta and chapati. And then I moved as an executive assistant to a chairman in India. That was again interesting. Again, a very peculiar move. Lots of people said, okay, but of course you're a part of the chairman's office, so you want to take that up. Amazing learning. So each, I mean, and there's of course lots of stuff, but generally speaking, all of these then added to the very high level of learning and dealing with the high level of ambiguity. Because when you do something which you don't know, you always find that the job is ahead of you by miles, and you're running. How much ever you pretend that you're a cat, really speaking, you're chasing it. You are getting questions which are asked which you can't answer. So it becomes a very high energy, high momentum game.
There's an adrenaline rush, and there is this, and you're learning. And as long as you're willing to learn, and you have that fire for learning. But tell me, chairman's office. I mean, has there been a precedent where people move to a chairman's office as EA and then get out to a line function? Does that happen? Has it happened?
Yeah, pretty much. It's a very often.
Okay.
Very much developmental, great developmental stint, if you like, spending some time right
The
at the top.
exposure is phenomenal, obviously.
Yeah, exposure is phenomenal. You zoom out, zoom in, you learn totally new things. And then I moved into media, which is when we met, so it's nearly 20 years now. I didn't know anything about media by the time I moved in. So I had no idea what it is. I knew that it's exciting and fascinating. But it was
now
fun,
you're referred to as the media guru. So, you've come a long way.
Still a lot to learn.
Yeah. I also remember you telling me this thing that you were, and I'm going completely away from your job now, coming to more the lighter side of you. But I remember, I think it was one of the trips where we met, and 26/11 when it happened in Mumbai, the terrorist attack. You were at the Taj, right?
That's right. So I was staying at the Taj. I was already in my role in Singapore, but overseeing India. So because I was traveling to Mumbai on work, I was staying at the Taj at that time when the incident happened. Yes.
So what happened? I mean,
that's again the life-changing moment, right? Totally life-changing moment. I was stuck in there for a little over 6 hours. Managed to get out at 4 a.m. in the morning after that whole thing. Pretty much ran out without my passport. So I had my mobile phone, my wallet, and myself, and I was out of there. And I was just lucky to get out, frankly. I mean, and later we've now seen it in movies and the TV shows. I think there are a couple of shows running on television which capture very nicely what happened on the day. But I was just simply plain lucky. And then it's quite interesting, So after I ran out, I didn't have my passport, and I was keen to get back to Singapore as soon as I could. And that as soon as I could in my mind was like, I want to go today. Can I go now? But without a passport, you can't go, obviously, right? So I managed to get my passport done. And when I say I managed, but literally on that day.
You got a new passport?
On the day. I got out in the morning and I took the night flight out of Singapore with a new passport. So the Indian system, the entire was phenomenal. Of course, there was nobody else other than me, perhaps in the whole city, wanting to get a passport done. So it might be the only passport done on that particular day, but perfectly fine. But incredible experience, life-changing for me for sure, which is where I also then began to truly adopt the philosophy which I spoke earlier about the past being past and the future, but the now is wow. Because generally speaking, we are a speck in the bigger scheme of the universe, right? So we could just get tossed away like a fly at any time. So, you make the most of it while you're there and live well, make sure that people around you, friends, family, everyone, you are contributing to and making people, doing your best to be happy. It doesn't always end as a happy story, but you give it all because you've escaped. You've seen it, very close.
So when did you get to know? Where were you? Were you in your room?
I was watching. I was watching cricket. There was an India cricket match going on right on TV. So I was following cricket game when it all started. I think about 10ish in the night, and then the whole thing unfolded over several days actually, but specifically for me, a few hours. And then once I was out, I was fine. As in, it took me couple of days I lost a lot of weight.
What was your first reaction when you got to know you're sitting in the room? Obviously, I would presume you would have switched to a news channel or something.
Yeah. There's a lot of things transpired during the night. You switched to news channels. I was in touch with my boss then. She was in New York and it was Thanksgiving Day in New York. So I was in touch with her we used to have those BlackBerry messengers, if you remember, Blackberries those days.
That's right.
BBM, we were exchanging continuously, messages going back and forth. Then the TVs were switched off on. So I was just following news which was coming from outside. I knew a lot of people, so I thought somebody will get me out. But there was, that day there was nobody. Nobody could get anybody out. You were truly at the. So it was, luck.
I'm very interested now. I'm very interested. So tell me, I mean, you have to tell me. So now there is silence and whatever information you're getting is on BlackBerry. So how did you muster that courage to open the door and get out of the room? Because I know the Taj layout, right? I know the rooms, I know the corridors.
So first, I have 2-3 memories. One is this whole idea of BlackBerry and phones and keeping charge. In fact, later I always advise everybody to do a few things. One is to, be in running condition so that you can run for your life, which I experienced. So you should be able to run a few kilometers, hopefully without stopping. Secondly, having the mobile phone charged, because I think if that was not charged or I didn't have the phone, I would have gone crazy, very clearly, right? So it helped. The fact that there was some news coming back and forth and all that.
Moral of the story, keep your mobile phones charged, always.
Always, and be in running condition. And what the other message, Raj, which is important, is to really, we never think of this, right? So what's after us? What's the insurance? What will happen? In the unfortunate event, with the suddenness, and this is the world we live in. Like, forget 26/11, but even today, what's happening with the pandemic? So insurance. So there are a lot of messages. But as that was happening, I mean, one of the things which is again goes back to my NCC training, and also I didn't have I didn't open the minibar, no drinks, nothing. I was like, okay, I got to stay alert because this is crazy stuff going on over there. I remember the brand Ritter chocolates. You normally get Ritter chocolates only in minibars and hotels. You rarely find, I never bought a Ritter chocolate in my life, but that brand I have great value for, because I ate a couple of chocolates, to say it pumps you up, right? So in NCC, we used to have Parle glucose biscuits. And Parle glue, have a pack of biscuits and then you all pumped up to, high energy. So like that, I had a couple of chocolates. And then when I got out, it was just a sense of relief, frankly, just crazily relieved that I was out and it was all over behind me. But when I made the dash, it was because of the fire. It wasn't because of the bullets flying or anything. In fact, I didn't encounter like they've shown in the movies and all, possibly a little ramp, but I didn't. But there was fire, quite a lot of fire and smoke all over. And like you said, the layout is quite simple. Actually, it's a nice old construction. You just run through the, one sort of place. But you run left. I was lucky. If I had run right, who knows? So those sort of things again. So I've ever since, and for that matter, in general, a big believer in good fortune.
Yeah. And so, so you went to the back door, front door. How did you get out?
Back. Very much the back. I think the front door is where a lot of action was, but I went through the back. And coincidentally, as in I don't know anything better, but we when we travel, right? You travel a lot. Yeah. You go to a hotel. Somebody wants to show you the room exit sign. You don't pay attention to all this, right? When you go to an airplane, people are telling you to take safety. So since that day, one of the things for me is like I tune, I immediately tune into environment from a safety perspective. It automatically happens to me. What I notice, you'll notice after this conversation, next few days, you'll notice exit signs if you go. What is the exit sign? Because when there's fire, we don't pay attention to it at all. So it has to be higher in our consciousness. We shouldn't take it for granted is, one key thing I would say for all of us, because we are so cool, right? So we just think, okay, what's there? What is there to pay attention to a seat belt or to, we should pay attention to it. Very important, saves lives.
Interesting. No, but it was a sad moment for what happened at that time. I remember it was my daughter's birthday and we were in Jew. So I'll always remember that day.
We lost some colleagues from the industry, so many other, so I think definitely, absolutely unbelievable day in the history of India, Mumbai, and hopefully never again.
I hope so, yeah. So then you moved to Singapore after that. I mean, not after that, but during that time.
I was already there, yeah.
So how was the movement to Singapore?
It's a great place. I think I often call Singapore the best city in India, because it has everything great about India in terms of being able to access, and yet it's a developed country, a wonderful city. It's very well organized, and I really enjoyed. Singapore is a great place. I still love it. And then we moved to London 4 years back. Singapore's, I was there a long time. I had a great journey, and I think about it like I had 2-3 different aspects, phases of life as well as profession, which happened within a short time period of 8-9 years. So it was terrific, because if you rewind the clock, today we are talking on Zoom, we have Facebook Live, we have Instagram, we have so many different platforms. But 10-11 years back, this was just beginning, right?
Yeah.
So halfway, when I moved there, media was big. TV was it. Of course, billboards, print TV, that was the world. And digital had started. And then 3 years in, 4 years in, it was just starting, but had become big, especially in China. So I saw it a lot happening in China. I used to oversee China also those days. And when I saw it happening in China, it really pulled me in, and that's how my journey into digital started. Because I said, oh, wow, this is super exciting. I began to learn more, understand more. These are very early days of Facebook, not early days of Google, but certainly compared to today, early days. And that whole thing became a fascinating journey for me.
I remember we went together on a trip to the US, where we went to Yahoo. This was maybe in 2004 or something, 2004, 2005. We went to Yahoo, we went to Google. Facebook was not there that time.
It wasn't there.
It wasn't there, right? And I went to Mountain View many years later, recently.
I have a photo of you sleeping on the chair, Yahoo chair. I remember when in one of the sessions you decided to take a power nap. You may not remember this, but I do. You took a power nap and you were lying down on the sort of chair, and I think I have a photo of you like there.
Yeah.
So
I remember Rohit Gupta and you. I know you clicked that picture, and I have memories. We went to Microsoft, we went to Yahoo, we went to Google, and then and that time Facebook was not there. So what I was telling you is, recently I went to Google again a couple of years ago, and all the memories came back, and I was thinking, now Yahoo was almost literally not there, and then there was Facebook, and how things evolve and how things change. And
the Yahoo campus was massive, right? I remember that beautiful campus. They invited us very warmly with those purple. There used to be purple color.
Jerry Yang himself
that's right.
hosted a dinner for us or something like that. I remember.
He came for a session. That's right.
Yeah. So very cool. And who would have thought that now from there the journey would come to you heading digital transformation.
Yeah.
Before we get into that, I'm still back in Singapore. Singapore is where you met Sonia, right?
Yeah, that's right. We met a few years back.
Yes.
That's correct.
So how did you meet Sonia?
I was speaking at an event, a Mobile Marketing Association event.
For those of you who don't know, Sonia is Rahul's wife, pretty wife.
Yeah. So her agency, she has her own business in Singapore, her own public relations agency. And they were running, in a manner of speaking, the event for the Mobile Marketing Association, which one of my friends those days had invited me to speak at. So I was a speaker at an event. And that's the first time we met. And then, of course, then we met. And as they say, so slowly sort of one thing leads to another. And here we are in London and married.
So
I learned a lot of things from her, by the way.
We all do. Let me tell you that. Yeah. Very few of us give credit, because if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't be who we are. Stability comes from the better half, as I would call
it.
Yeah. Coming back, so tell me about this digital transformation. What exactly is your role?
See, there are many aspects of what's happening around us, and I think it can all be summarized into saying that technology, and in particular digital technology as we know it, is impacting lives, right? So for sure, this call and Facebook and social media is one manifestation of that, but also in business. So it's not only because where people spend more time, automatically it becomes attractive for businesses, and which is why we see big market capitalization or revenues for some of the digital companies. New phenomena, last few years, massively accelerated e-commerce and the whole idea of channels of consumption, channels of shopping changing to e-commerce. So that's again a big part of digital transformation. Employee experiences and how actually employees are now either being recruited, onboarded, at work, and how they contribute, all of that turning digital. In fact, it's interesting right now. Anish, my son, is doing his internship in the US, and the entire experience is all digital because they're working from home. So they got sent their computer, they got their onboarding, they have their virtual socials on Zoom. So completely from not recruitment was also digital, but recruitment to now what's going on, everything is digital, right? So when we say therefore digital transformation, it can mean many things to many people, but in summary, it's really about, serving consumers better, serving customers better, serving employees better, and arguably serving all stakeholders better using the power of technology. And then there are many layers. There is data and the influence of data on how it can enrich lives, because data can dramatically impact for positively how things are done, analytics. So there's many aspects, but I think it comes down to how do we simply serve people better. And the people could be depending on what business you're in: consumers, customers, employees, or other stakeholders.
Do you think that the pandemic has been probably the biggest enabler of digital transformation?
I think it's an accelerator for sure, but we shouldn't forget that even before the pandemic, things were changing very dramatically and accelerating. What it's done is it's taken it mainstream, particularly in a country like India, but I think everywhere, it's taken the mainstream and it's accelerated the curve much, much faster. But it would be absolutely fair to say that even before and without the pandemic, the acceleration it was still fast. So it's almost like, suddenly from gear 2, gear 3, at which it was running nicely, it's turbocharged.
You want to talk there?
Yeah. And this will, some of it will stick, like basically you see whether it's WhatsApp, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all the platforms, and e-commerce. E-commerce, of course, I know in India has been closed during the course of the lockdown, but as it opens, you, I think, described earlier, Raj, that you get deliveries, right?
I haven't stepped out of my house for almost 4 months now. Haven't stepped out.
Yeah. So some of this behavior will stick, right? Because you'll ask yourself that isn't it better that I, or keep ordering? Some of it will be subscription, because things which you repetitively order, why would you go to a store? And this is happening to all people. So this is a very common aspect of the transformation, that it's now touching people in very different ways. Grandmothers are on WhatsApp, they're doing Zoom calls with you, so technology, you don't have to be super savvy because it's on your phones and it's so easy to do. Here's a spin which I was reflecting on the other day. A big positive out of this is that many people who were earlier camera shy have now become camera confident. I would be really surprised if we meet, a person a few months down the line or even today who says I'm camera shy, because even if they were, now they're confident because this is the way they're living now. So they cannot afford to be camera shy. It's a big plus. The stage confidence, camera confidence, being able to talk, everybody is now on it.
Yeah. That I agree. I completely agree on that. In fact, I saw a tweet by, I think, Harsh Goenka 2 days ago. And he said we have recruited some 130 or 140 people across different parts of India, all digitally. And they're all working from their homes. And what do you think about working from homes? I mean, because I was speaking to my relationship manager from a bank, a large bank in India, a huge private sector bank. And she said that they've already been told that the future for them, at least for more than 60% of the employees, is going to be working from home. You think that is a trend that will catch on now?
I think so. I think companies have discovered that it's possible. Managers have discovered it's possible. Employees have discovered that it's possible to contribute. Cuts down on commute time. I mean, the pluses are significantly higher, and therefore quite a lot of action will shift to working from home. That said, I still feel that collaboration and social contact, I miss that. For example, I'm sure you do as well. That is at that. Yeah, exactly. And you can do this, but if you have a choice, you and I would rather have a coffee somewhere and have a meal. So I think therefore it will vary in terms of, firstly, the cultures and the subcultures, and to some extent it will vary in the form of what functions, right? Because the work from home is a luxury and a privilege that we have, where we are largely office led, right? So for example, the friend that you mentioned, the banker, and if customer facing a branch, some of those things will be very difficult to work from home because they will remain, right? I mean, in fact, in many places, the banking system is considered as essential service. You have to open a branch, you have to serve people.
Yeah.
So the front face of serving people, selling product, actually sort of being there, will remain. They can't work from home. And then at the back end, which is manufacturing or operations, that's not a luxury yet. So it's somewhere in between people like us in different kind of sectors that we can effectively work from home, certainly a few days a week, if not all. And then when required, we will do, have collaborative spaces which are different and meet people and all that. But if you were to think of an index, certainly this has opened up the eyes, and therefore we will see a lot of that. In places like Mumbai, where I lived for a long time and commuting is such a challenge, people will make choices, So you will very easily now, earlier if you were to go and meet a client or somebody which was an hour's drive, now guys might choose to do a FaceTime call or a Zoom call and say it works, it's fine, right? So
actually now the client may also not want to meet you.
Yeah. At the moment, that is how it is. Yes.
Yeah. So, since you have been in media and you understand media from your quick predictions, I mean, for the next 12 months, where do you think advertising is going?
I think, the predictions are really, really easy to make right now because there's a high probability that they're going to go wrong. And the risk of making a prediction like this in a conversation is very low, right? So it's easy for me to stick my neck out. But I think there are a couple of angles which I would say are going to be big accelerators, and we'll see more and more acceleration. And I'm speaking now from my understanding of the Indian context, but also applies elsewhere. But I'll for the purpose of this, India. And the second is there are some real big headwinds and challenges. And the headwinds and challenges also will remain. And in this, both the headwinds as well as the tailwinds, there'll be winners and losers, or people will create opportunities, right? I think the big challenges will be on industries like print, from a media perspective or from an advertising perspective, people reading, because that's going to get challenged. It's really going to be a lot of headwinds. No doubt about digital acceleration, we spoke about it. So that will continue to grow very fast and just keep sort of growing faster and faster. And then there is a in between, which is the whole space of television and what is now being called OTT entertainment. And the OTT will accelerate because people are just getting used to great content. And when I say people, I'm now talking of the masses. So large numbers, right? And some of them will be freemium, some of them will be premium, whatever the subscribers are. But pretty much, actually, the entire universe of what we traditionally think as TV viewing population at some stage will sample and get hooked onto OTT. The other day I was talking, and we think of India often as there's this challenge of, will people really pay subscription for OTT content? And we think, oh, no, but it's like, no, right? But India is one of those markets where people are used to paying for content. It just so happens that pay TV penetration is very high, right?
Very true.
Just about every household pays, I don't know what the number is, but varying from, I guess, 300 rupees to a few thousands or 1,000 or whatever. So this transition is going to be interesting. So if people will, consume content for sure, but will also be willing to pay for it. So it's almost like a myth that, subscription, India is not, there is no such thing as India is not a subscription market. Pay TV is a big deal in India. In fact, one of the highest penetrations in Asia of pay TV is in India. You compare it.
We call it free, but the fact is every house has paid some subscription to get a cable connection. Yeah, very true. Coming back, I mean, was Unilever one of the companies that have stopped advertising on fake news and things like that? A lot of companies have taken this initiative of stop advertising on Facebook, for example, and things like that.
In the US, in the US on certain platforms, but it's restricted to the US at the moment. Okay. And I say at the moment because we've said finitely till for a period of time. And secondly, US, because currently the polarization there and what's happening there is very different from what's happening elsewhere.
Okay. But do you think this is a professional question? As a professional from the industry, you don't have to answer it if you don't want to. But do you think something like this should be restricted to a medium, or should it be for all mediums, whether it is TV, whether it's print, whether it's digital?
I think, see, the concept is there is greater democratization in some mediums than there are others, right? So if you take news, for example, there is a different kind of regulation. If you take social media, there's a different sort of regulation. So I don't think that one can broadly apply rules across all media, right? Apart from responsible behavior and, you know, responsible frameworks, whether it is infrastructure, whether it is, like you said, what kind of news, that remains. But after that, I think all media are different, and therefore I would hesitate to have a broad comment like, you know, everybody should come in the ambit or not. In general, when there's a high level of self-regulation, and both of us in some ways have been involved with different forms of regulation in an Indian context, and there's good self-regulation, well governed, well regulated, then industry regulation is suffices, you know, like self-regulation. But then when that doesn't happen, you have to bring more and more sort of checks and balances in, and they will vary by media. So I don't think it's as straightforward as saying, you know, let's sweep everybody under with one broad brush, or for that matter, be very specific and go after only one platform, whether big or small.
Okay. Yeah, fair enough. We are running out of time, so I won't take too much of your time. So quickly, are you a Bollywood buff?
I am.
So what's the latest movie you watched?
What is the latest? The latest movie I watched, I think, some time back was Thappad. Obviously, we're watching all movies only on the television now, or on Netflix, Amazon.
Yeah.
I watched Thappad. I've been watching a lot of. I've been watching quite a lot of Hindi OTT content.
So which are the ones you watched of late? Which one you like?
The very recent, I watched Arya. I watched. I think it's called Story of the Siege or something on Z5. Z5, Hotstar special, of course Netflix and Amazon and Patal Lok, and, you know, but yeah, I've been watching a whole lot of Hindi content. Quite excited, and I think they're producing some really good stuff. So I love it.
Good. I haven't watched. I wish I could watch as much as you have. I still have to watch. I make this list and then I don't get down to watching them, saying that I'll watch it tomorrow. And there's lots happening. And before you go, you know, and I genuinely meant it when in one of my tweets when I introduced you, I said you're a person who actually radiates or inspires positivity. And I want to ask you, what's your mantra? What is it that you're always positive?
I think, I don't know about a mantra, Raj. It's just the way I think, or more than the way I think, the more the way I am. Right. One of the philosophies I have in life is that the way you do something is the way you do everything. So you can't wear a mask for very long, right? So if I want to, but for the fact that we had these conversations, something stays when you are actually who you are. And I believe a great deal in being myself. So that's, I think, important. And then I think energy. I have enormous amount of energy. Often, you know, the people around say, like, you know, khata kya kind of energy. And I've always thought, and very often, you know, I can be exhausting for others, right? But in between being exhausted and exhausting, I would rather be exhausting than exhausted. So I'm always pumped up, you know, watching football with my son Ishan, or, you know, even watching football, I'm pumped up, right? I'd love to jump up and celebrate a goal rather than sit. So yeah, I think, and then living in the now, the power of the now, and the now is wow is a very important part of me.
I'm going to imbibe that. Now is wow.
Now is wow. Absolutely. Now is wow. And lots of things are happening around us. They will continue to happen. Right. So stress is going to be there. Pressure is going to be there. But if we can just imbibe being in the moment, enjoying ourselves, then I think it's all good.
Fabulous. One thing you'd like to say to all the viewers. First of all, I would like to thank all the viewers who are watching this show and truly appreciate that you keep coming back week on week. Continue to come back. I need viewers to watch my show. And in case you miss it, you can always go and follow me on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, at Raj Cheerful with a double L. And Rahul, if you have to give one message to all the viewers who are listening to you, what is that message you would like to give them?
First, I'd say, if you like this show, like karo, subscribe karo, I know that you have a channel, so I'd encourage your fans to subscribe more. I know that you are really doing this in a very innovative manner. It's very spontaneous. This is the first show where I have not, I didn't know what we were going to talk. So it's just.
None of my guests know what they're going to talk. And that's why that's the beauty of it. It's live, it's free flowing. I also don't know what I'm going to talk.
It's a very, very wonderful conversation. I think, look, it won't be, so I wouldn't say it from the perspective of a message or something, because that would, I'd like to keep my feet on the ground, but just a philosophy to share. I think if we are watching this right now, and as we are speaking to each other, we are incredibly privileged, right? And therefore, if there is a sign-off line, I would say that that sign-off to me is that of gratefulness, that we can have a conversation like this, we can have food on our plate, that we can talk to each other, because a lot that's happening around us right now is far more strenuous and demanding. So the moment we size up and understand this privilege, I think we will be much better off as people, trying to help others, trying to contribute, and in some ways, therefore, actually adding value to others' lives as well as our own. Right. So apart from, therefore, the idea of privilege and gratefulness at this moment, I don't have any big message to give, but just the fact that let's continue what we're doing, keep the conversations going, keep rocking, keep watching, keep positive. Yeah.
That's beautifully put, Rahul. I mean, you said it all. It's actually, we are so privileged to have food on our table, roof on our head, and to have that gratitude. I think all of us, I think we should count our blessings. One last...
make others smile, don't forget that, smiling.
Yes, don't forget to smile. And that's why I kept my handle as Raj Cheerful, right? Quickly, this one thing I ask all my guests: what does happiness mean to you, and what are the 3 things that make you happy?
What is happiness? Happiness to me is between the eyes. What makes me happy? A Liverpool win, a football win. That is perhaps the only time when
you're making a lot of people unhappy with this statement.
Oh, yeah, but the only time, Raj, that I feel a little down, and it's for a short period of time, is when we lose a game. Whether it's India losing cricket, whether it's Liverpool losing football, that really pulls me down for a few hours, and then, but after that, it's all good.
Yeah.
So that's definitely one thing. My family makes me happy. My sons, my daughter, and the welfare, and generally to see them happy is great. It's not always rosy, because of course we are a family, so as in it's and we are spread out, so our own challenges, but generally I just absolutely a great source of joy and happiness. And the third is just seeing others thrive. And when I say others, meaning I don't mean in a very profound way that I build great teams, and all of that is a small part of seeing others thrive. But when you see societies, people around you, actually sort of lifting the game in whatever form it is, and accomplishing good stuff or moving forward, that makes me happy, just to see the progress. There's terrific progress happening all around us. We choose often not to see it, but if you really think of India 5 years back, we spoke of how we went to Silicon Valley a few years back. Every day there is progress around you. Choose to see it. Focus on what you can see as progress, not on the 10 problems which are log gates, but progress. The guy who did deliveries to you, and just see how switched on he is today on WhatsApp, or how he gets deliveries vis-a-vis few years back. So the mindset of seeing progress with a positive bent of mind can be a game changer. So that makes me happy, just to see how things move forward. Yeah.
Yeah, I keep telling people, one way, what makes me happy is to see other people happy. I mean, the moment you see people around you happy, you automatically become happy, because, and it's a little bit of a selfish thing to say, because actually a lot of us do a lot of things to make ourselves happy. You even philanthropy, you do things, you give things to people because it makes you happy. On that note, thank you so much, Rahul. Thank you for spending time, and we'll meet again whenever you come to India or I come to London, and hopefully soon. Hopefully soon, and love to the family. And thank you. Thank you once again.
And thanks very much. Really enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you, Rahul.
Yes, bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you, everybody.